Week 11, it's here. And he has the top 30 running back rankings. Number 1, Alvin Kamara is on top of my list once again. He's got a great matchup versus Atlanta. Jameis Winston, he's going to be the starting quarterback in this one for the Saints, but I don't think it makes a difference. I think it helps Kamara even more. He's going to get a little bit of more of a workload. Winston in relief last week, he didn't look that good versus San Francisco, so I think Kamara, he's going to get a few more catches. You could see him even do a couple wheel routes or maybe take it to the house. So Kamara, he's going to be fine with the quarterback change. As long as he's going to get his touches in the ball, he's going to put up his 25-30 points. Atlanta can't stop no one. This game's going to be a shootout. And Kamara, he's going to have a great game. Number 2, Dalvin Cook versus the Dallas Cowboys. It don't get any better for Cook. It's going to be way different than it was last week for Dalvin Cook. Last week versus the Bears, they bottled them up. A lot of 1 to 2 yard gains versus this Dallas defense. I could see Cook explode for another 200 yards from scrimmage or even rushing in this one. The Cowboys, they're not going to have an answer for Cook. Cook, he's going to get that 40-plus fantasy day, I think, this week versus Dallas. So fire him up and expect a monster game. Number 3, Josh Jacobs. Jacobs now the last few weeks, he's bounced back and he's looked good. The Raiders relying on him, giving him a heavy workload in the last 2 weeks. In Week 9, he had 31 carries. And then last week in Week 10, Josh Jacobs with 21 carries for 112 yards and 2 touchdowns versus Denver. And this week he versus Kansas City. Hopefully the game script goes in Jacobs' favor, because if this game does get out of hand, his numbers are going to go down because he's not a pass-catching back, really. He'll only get you 2 or 3 catches out of the backfield a game. So Jacobs, still, I got him ranked number 3. You got to ride the hot hand. I was down on him the last few weeks, but now the workload is there, and he's looking good and healthy. So Jacobs is number 3. Number 4, Derrick Henry. I know he's got a tough matchup. He's been in a little bit of a slump, but I think this week at Baltimore, they're going to emphasize trying to run the ball and keeping Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore offense off the field, even though they haven't been great themselves this year, the Baltimore offense. But Henry, this time of year, late November, early December, is where we've seen Henry have his biggest games of his career. And it wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if he ran for 150 to 200 yards on the ground. So Henry, I still like the upside. I know it's been a down 2-3 weeks for him, but this week I think he gets back on track, even though Baltimore gives up the 3rd least amount of fantasy points to running backs. Number 5, Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles. Sanders, he came back from injury last week versus the Giants, and he had a mediocre game. Just the only thing, 2 touchdowns were vultured in that game versus the Giants. Bernard Scott had a 56-yard rush for a touchdown. Then Corey Clement, the 3rd-string running back, getting a goal-line stomper in there and taking it away from Sanders. But this week, if the weather's bad again, we're going to see the Eagles run the ball a lot, and I say they should run a lot. Carson Wentz, he's just not getting the job done. I think they got to run it more and keep their defense off the field and fresh. So Miles Sanders, I think he has a breakout game, and I could see him hitting a home run for a 60, 70-yard touchdown in this one. Number 6, Aaron Jones, very tough matchup versus Indianapolis in Indy. They give up the least amount of fantasy points to running backs, but Aaron Jones, this is a guy I'm starting each and every week. He's matchup proof. I think Jones, he's a guy who's capable of breaking out 30 to 40 fantasy points on any given week. But this week, I don't see that happening for him. But still, I'm not doubting Aaron Jones. He's another week healthier. The Packers, they know this is going to be a tough game. They're going to have to run it in the trenches. And this is what they've saved Jones for. Games like this where they got to win and stay up there in the division. Number 7, DeAndre Swift. This guy for weeks, I've been saying, get more work. And it finally happened versus the Washington football team last week, where Swift had 130 yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns in that game versus Washington. And Swift this week, he's got a great matchup at Carolina. Carolina gives up the 4th most fantasy points to running backs. And now with Matthew Stafford banged up, they're going to run the ball even more in this game. Swift last week had 16 carries. This week I could see him getting 20 to 25 or at least 25 touches with the catches out of the backfield. They finally gave him the keys to the backfield, and now you go out there and start Swift each and every week, and I think he has another big game this week like he did last. Number 8, Nick Chubb versus Philadelphia. Nick Chubb, he came back like he didn't miss a beat last week. Just the only thing, he might have screwed some fantasy owners, not running that one in where he would have had a 60-yard touchdown, and that was 6 points taken away. He ran out at the 1, but anyway, Chubb looked good. 19 carries, 126 yards, and a touchdown. He's the man over there. I know Kareem Hunt got a lot of work, but this week I think Chubb's going to get even more work, and if the weather's bad, it's going to be another running game. And Philly, they can't stop no one. We just saw Wayne Gorman go for 18 carries, 53 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So Chubb, he's in a great matchup, and he's going to have a good game. Number 9, Joe Mixon. But the thing is with Joe Mixon now, he hasn't played in weeks. He missed practice again yesterday. This foot injury is very concerning, and I don't know if he's going to play, but I'm putting him here in the rankings because these rankings come out on Thursday. But anyway, Joe Mixon now, if he don't play, Gio Bernard, he's a good start, but he's not going to be number 9 in my rankings. But if Mixon does play, he's got a good matchup. Washington, they get shredded on the ground. We saw it last week versus the Lions and DeAndre Swift. So if Mixon plays, he's going to get his full workload. Joe Burrow, he needs that big back there in Mixon where they could get some of the work off him. Because Gio Bernard, he's not an every down back, I think. Mixon is, so they got to get him back. So if he does play, he's number 9. Number 10, Ezekiel Elliott at Minnesota. Elliott's still banged up, practice reports come out. But I think he's going to be fine, and I think this week he finally gets it going again. Elliott hasn't had a double-digit fantasy day since week 6, but this week I think he's going to get the job done. Andy Dalton's back. Minnesota, their defense ain't all that great. The game's indoors as well, which is another good sign. So Elliott, now with Dalton behind center, teams got to respect the throw at least a little more than having Garrett Gilbert and Benny DiNucci as quarterbacks. Elliott, I think he could put top 10 numbers up this week. You know, the volume is going to be there, and if it's a close game, he's going to get 20, 25 carries. Number 11, James Conner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's got a great matchup this week versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, who give up the 5th most fantasy points to running backs. But the thing with Conner, I don't know what it's been, but the last 2 weeks now, in Dallas in week 9, he barely got the ball, it seemed like. They were going 5 wide at that game, even though it was a 10-point game. Conner had 2 carries the whole second half in that one. And then last week, in a matchup where I thought he was going to have a big game, he only had 13 carries for 36 yards was Conner. But this week versus Jacksonville, hopefully the Steelers pound on the rock. The volume's still there and the workload's still there for Conner. Just they got so many guys on that offense. Sometimes they get pass happy. But this week, I think Conner, he'll bounce back, and he could get you a 15, 20-point game. Number 12 is James Robinson in the same game versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. What a season it's been for James Robinson, the undrafted rookie. And now we know why they got rid of Leonard Fournette. This guy is way better than him, and Fournette at this point looks washed in my opinion. But anyway, Robinson seems like every game he's getting 100 yards rushing, or at least getting over 100 yards from scrimmage with a touchdown. Robinson, he's ceilings anywhere 15 to 30 each and every week. It seems like he's giving you. So James Robinson, what a find. If you drafted him or picked him up early in the year, you got a top 10 to 15 running back for the rest of the season. But this week, it's going to be a tough matchup versus Pitt. But he's the main man in their offense. Lutton's going to start. You know, they're going to rely on the rookie running back again in this one. And his workload, he's still going to get 20, 25 touches with the catching also out of the backfield. Number 13, Chris Carson, another guy with another foot injury. Hopefully tonight Carson could play versus the Arizona Cardinals, and Seattle and fantasy owners need him in a big way. This guy, he's a top 10 talent if he does play. Catches the ball out of the backfield. Tough runner in between the tackles, and Seattle needs him a lot in this one. They've lost 3 out of 4 games now with Carson out. So Carson hopefully comes back. If not, Carlos Hyde, he's fully healthy and off the injury report with the hamstring injury. So he'll be the starter if Carson can't play tonight to plug in at running back. Number 14, Mike Davis of the Carolina Panthers. Another week that Christian McCaffrey's out for the Panthers. Who knows how long he's going to be out with the shoulder and the rib injury. And the Panthers, they're starting to fall down now in the standings, losing the last 3 games in a row. Mike Davis, his workload's been cut a little also. Curtis Samuel, he's been getting some carries out of the backfield, but last week both guys were pretty much non-existent in the beatdown they got versus Tampa Bay. But this week he's got a great matchup. It's Mike Davis versus the Detroit Lions, who give up the most fantasy points to running backs. So Mike Davis, I think he has a bounce-back game. I think he's going to do good. And they got to get him the ball more. The first 3-4 weeks when McCaffrey was out, this guy was giving you 20 to 25 fantasy points in PPR leagues. So this week, maybe they'll go back to him. And if Bridgewater is out, P.J. Walker, he's going to dump it out. And they're going to rely more on Mike Davis. Number 15, Todd Gurley at New Orleans. I know New Orleans, they're not giving up many rushing yards. They give up the second least amount of fantasy points to running backs. But Todd Gurley, this guy this year, he's been surprising. He's a guy I've been saying, though, sell him because the numbers are going to go down. But he's still getting volume. He's got 9 touchdowns. He's getting all the goal line work. And that's why he's still a top 15 option, even in a tough matchup this week in a game that I think is going to be a shootout. But anyway, Todd Gurley, he's number 15 for me on this list. Number 16, Antonio Gibson, the Washington football team. Gibson and Mckissic, it was a nice timeshare last week, and both guys produced huge fantasy games. Gibson with 2 touchdowns versus Detroit. This week he's back home versus Cincinnati, and the Bengals, their defense ain't all that great. Gibson, I think he could give you 100 total yards and a touchdown in this one as well. But just know J.D. Mckissic, he's definitely the passing downs back, and he's got 29 targets in his last 2 ball games. Number 17, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at Vegas. Helaire, he hasn't been that good this year. A lot of teams drafted him in the first round, and that's a big no-no, and he's been a bust. But this week he gets Vegas. Half that defense is depleted or went on the COVID-19 list because they've been in close contact with someone. But anyway, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's a middle-of-the-pack running back. Hopefully he gets more carries and more snaps. Le'Veon Bell, he hasn't looked the same anyway for this Chief team. So I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he'll get 10 or 15 carries, and you hope he gets the goal line touches and scores in this one. Number 18, Damian Harris of the New England Patriots. This guy, he's driving up the rankings each and every week, coming off a huge game versus the Baltimore Ravens with 22 carries and 124 yards. So Damian Harris, when this guy gets a good workload, it seems like he's going over 100 yards each and every week. I had him on my running back starter list, and this week I got him in the top 20 here at number 18. He's got a good matchup versus Houston, who a lot of running backs do their thing versus, and I think Harris might crack 100 yards again in this one. The only thing, he's not going to catch the ball out of the backfield, but Harris, you still got to start him. The volume's insane for him. Number 19, J.D. Mckissic. I just spoke about him in Gibson's talk, but anyway, Mckissic here, he's versing Cincinnati. 29 targets in his last 2 games. He's a PPR machine with now 34 fantasy points in his last 2 games combined. So McKissic, the work's going to be there. His quarterback's Alex Smith, who's missed the check down himself. And if Washington's trailing like they did last week in Detroit, we saw McKissic line up as a receiver, line up in the backfield, obviously. So he's everywhere. They're moving him. And he's one of the main targets in that offense with Terry McLaurin. Number 20, Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson with an underperformance last week versus Cleveland. He only had 5.5 fantasy points. But this week he's indoors. He's versus New England. New England, they're going to be focused on stopping Will Fuller in this game and Watson from running. So Duke Johnson, I think he's still a sneaky play. I got him 20 here. He can maybe slide in 6 or 7 catches, especially if it's garbage time in this game. So Johnson, I think he could get you 13 to 15 points. But I'm going to put him at 20 after last week's down performance. 21, Ronald Jones versus the Los Angeles Rams this week. Jones last week, we saw him explode a 98-yard touchdown, which saved his day. I thought Arians was going to bench him once he fumbled the catch early in the first quarter, and that we were going to see Fournette for the rest of the game like we did on that Monday Night Football game versus the Giants a few weeks ago. But Jones, he redeemed himself, the big running touchdown. He had 23 touches in that game, so the backfield is now Ronald Jones's, in my opinion. And Fournette, he'll still get the third down and passing downs work, but Jones, he deserved now a big workload versus the Rams. It's going to be a tough matchup, but the volume's going to be there, so he's going to be a number 2 to a flex starting running back, Ronald Jones. Number 22, Kareem Hunt. Yeah, Hunt, I know He had a monster game last week, but they were breaking Chubb back in. He only had 19 touches. This week versus Philly, if it's bad weather again, they'll probably run a lot. And Philly, they're bad versus the run. Hunt, he's a number 2 to flex still running back. But I'm just not going to expect him to get 100 total yards and a touchdown from scrimmage again. Last week was the best week he had. And I think that's going to be the best he's going to do the rest of the way is Kareem Hunt. But you still got to play him. He's going to get snaps. He's going to get work. And that Brown offense is a run-first offense for sure. Number 23, Kenyon Drake. I'm surprised he came back last week after that ankle injury looked horrible a few weeks ago. But Drake, he came back with a vengeance. 16 rushes, 100 yards. And it looks like him and Edmonds are going to be headed for a split here tonight at Seattle. This is a big division game. A lot of things on the line here. And I think they're going to run in the trenches a lot to try to keep Wilson and that high-powered Seattle offense off the field. Edmonds also, he's going to get his work. But Drake I like a little better because he's going to get the goal line work. And he could get you 1 or 2 sneaky touchdowns tonight. And 24, the guy I just said, Chase Edmonds versus Seattle. He's going to get passing downs work more than anything. Like I said, the goal line's going to go to Drake. Edmonds, he's still going to be getting 10 to 15 touches. And if they're down in this game by 10 to 14 points, then that's where Edmonds' usage is really going to come in on a passing downs basis. But Edmonds, I'm going to rank him 24. 25, Kalan Ballage. It looks like we finally saw a running back in that Charger backfield take charge. And that was Ballage last week versus a tough Miami Dolphin defense. Ballage had a good game, 18 carries, 64 yards, and a touchdown, and 5 catches for 36 yards. So Ballage now, he's got a dream matchup versus the Jets. This might be the last week where he's going to be a full-time starter. Reports are saying Austin Eckler in week 12 or 13 is going to come back. But Ballage, I like him this week. Like I said, he's got the Jets. The Jets can't stop no one. Herbert, they're going to be worried about stopping more. So Ballage, he was a sneaky play last week. I had him as a sleeper, but this week he's a number 2 to a flex running back. So go out there and start Ballage. Number 26, Leonard Fournette. Like I said, he's still going to get the passing downs and the third down work, but he's not going to get the in-between the tackles. He don't look as quick as he was the last few years as Fournette. But Tampa Bay, they got so many weapons and so many guys. Fournette, he'll still be in the game plan, but just don't expect a good game out of him. So if you need a flex this week, that's where I'm going to play him. But I'm not expecting more than 10 points from Fournette this week. Number 27, Darrell Henderson of the Los Angeles Rams. Henderson, I said bench him this week. I said him bench him last week also. And it's concerning. His workload just isn't there. I know he's still the starter, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Cam Akers come out and start the game this Monday night at Tampa. But for now, I just got to keep Henderson here because he's still the starter as of now. He's going to get goal line touches, but he's touchdown dependent. Last week, only 7 carries for 28 yards, and that saved his fantasy day for Darrell Henderson. So right there, I guess you could play him, but don't expect much. Number 28, Nyheim Hines of the Indianapolis Colts. He's the only running back I could trust a little in that Colt backfield because Jonathan Taylor, he's not getting the job done. And Jordan Wilkins, he's a whatever. He's a guy just to stash on your bench. Hines, I know he's got the third down role. I know he's got the passing downs role, obviously. And Phillip Rivers, you know he likes those dump-offs to his running backs out of the backfield. And this week versus Green Bay, I could see a lot of that with that heavy pass rush coming at Rivers. Him to get it really quick and get it to Hines. And Hines now, the last 2 out of his 3 fantasy days, he's had over 25 fantasy points. I don't think he'll do it this week. But he's a guy, he's not a bad flex option, especially in PPR leagues. So he's number 28. Number 29, the rookie Salvin Ahmed. This week at Denver, I hope Matt Breida, who's fully practicing, doesn't come back and cut into the rookie's workload. This guy, he earned the spot. He looked great last week with 21 carries. He handled the workload versus the Chargers. He also had a touchdown and added a catch or 2. This guy, he was 4th on the depth chart and barely making the roster to start the year. And now he's earned a spot, so I hope he gets more work. He looks good. He was the top waiver wire pickup this week. If Gaskins comes back in a week or 2, though, Ahmed's stuff's going to go down his value. But this week, I want to see him get those 15 to 20 carries in Denver, a team you could run on. So Salvin Ahmed, I got 29. And number 30, LaMichael Pirine. It's about time the Jets give him the keys to the backfield like the Lions did to Swift last week. Reports have come out over the last week now that Pirine's going to get the workload for the Jets. His matchup, it's not that bad versus the Chargers. I could see him get a goal line touchdown here or there. And the Chargers, every game they're in is close, so I don't think it's going to be a blowout. And I think the game script is going to be a close game where Pirine could get 12 to 18 carries in this one. So I have him at number 30. And that's the top 30 running back rankings here for Week 11.